if you go through difficult things in life, which we all do or will, and you experience a certain amount of suffering, certainly these questions come to your mind about the goodness of God. Well, if God was good and God was powerful, then why would I go through this? And what we've tried to do is to take us through this series, because what it can do is strengthen our faith so that when you experience difficulty, your faith can withstand the difficulty that it's going through. And if your faith is shallow, like, Jesus told a story about the sun scorching the seed because it was in shallow soil. If your faith is shallow, it just can't handle much heat. There's nothing wrong with the heat. It's the depth. That's the problem. That's why the seed can't grow. And so you and I need the depth of our faith so that we can withstand the heat. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities for the heat to get turned up in your life. When Jesus talked about the sun scorching this plant, it was sun that is also there to give it life. What we know from basics of science is photosynthesis. You need the sun for the plant you need it, photosynthesis. But that same sun, if it's not in deep soil, the seed doesn't go down deep, it will destroy the thing it was designed to build and to create. So the problem is, what we do is we look at the wrong stuff. We say, stop with the sun. Stop asking tough questions of my faith. No, don't. I say, bring them all on. Are you with me? Every question, every doubt. I considered I may still starting a doubters club. Why not? There's nothing to be afraid of. If you're holding on to, listen to what I'm saying. If you're holding on to something good, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's no question, there's no scenario, there's no situation, and you may not have the answer, you may not understand it all, but it doesn't diminish your faith. It may challenge it, it may deepen it, it may need to strengthen it, but it doesn't diminish it. Maybe I will start a doubters club. The problem is, what's happened over time is culturally, a lot of Christians have been sort of, conditioned to not doubt. Even though they have them, they want to bring them up, because like when I started the series, you should have seen how many people came to me and go, thank you for talking about this. Because it's there, but what a lot of people do is you shove these things down because you think it's not allowed. And yet over and over and over, we see in the scripture doubt, right? We know of one of the disciples now referred to him as Doubting Thomas. And we know that, people were experiencing God's goodness, but they had all kinds of doubts. So when you go through life, what I'm hoping is that when you go through it, you will realize that in the end, God is still good. We use the story of Job, and what we know from the story of Job is it ends better. And if faith is anything, to me, what faith is, it's what I would call deep optimism. Deep optimism. Deep optimism is not naive optimism. You ever met a naive person? Thank you. If they're sitting close to you, don't be too loud. It was just, but yeah, yes, you have. And naive, you can really get sliced up. If you're naive, and that's not really what the kind of faith I'm talking about. It's deeper than that. It's deep optimism. It can see the suffering. It can see the realities of our world. It can see the evil that's around you. It can go through incredibly difficult and dark times. It has a sense and awareness of bad, but underpinning it all is relentless optimism. This is going to end good. I don't know how, but it's going to end good. Oftentimes I've shared this very simple story in a funeral services that I'm called on to conduct often. And, the story in John's gospel is Jesus is approached by the sisters of Lazarus because he's fallen sick. And so Mary and Martha, they come to Jesus and they say, hey, hurry, our brother is sick. And we know that from the story of the Gospels that it seemed like there was a close relationship with Jesus and Lazarus, and the sisters just assumed that Jesus would drop everything he was doing, run to Lazarus, and fix whatever he was going through. Who here has ever had that prayer? God, drop what you're doing. You know what I mean? These are our prayers. God, I got a situation here. And our prayers are always, God, let's get it going. Let's hustle. My coach hated it when we wouldn't hustle. You know what I mean? He'd say, everybody on the line, and he'd shuffle. Ooh, he did not like shuffling. He wanted a little what? A little chop, chop, a little enthusiasm. What do we want from God? A little chop, chop. Let's go, he's dying. And Jesus says, don't worry, this sickness will not end in death. This will not end in death. And then what happened? He died. For everybody that went to Sunday school. He died. He died and God lied. Or it seemed like he did for a minute. It sure seemed like it. It sure must have been the ultimate crisis of faith for Mary and Martha, who heard from Jesus. He's not going to die. It's not going to end in death. I guess I should be more precise, right? It's not going to end in death. And how many know sometimes God's end and our end are not the same thing? If you get that part figured out, you're a long way ahead. God's end and your end are not the same. This is over. I thought this was supposed. How many know God still has another card to play? This is over. Mary and Martha there, and Lazarus is gone, and Jesus is taking his time. He's healing people. He's ministering to people. He finally gets there, and then you know the story. Lazarus is resurrected. Lazarus, come forth. The thing that you need to grasp in your mind, and I love this because I love having the kids here. Because, even if they're going to go through difficulty like we all did in life, and they're going to make different twists and turns, but you know what? These songs are like seeds that are going down in their soul. How many of you ever sang a song from your childhood before? Come back to you. They're getting planted in there. Those seeds, they remain, and they will come back to them. And here's the thing. When this happens, Mary and Martha, they go through this crisis of faith. They learn something that they didn't know about God. And what can happen when you go through a crisis of faith? You're going to learn something that you didn't know. Job, it says at the end, therefore, God blessed the later part of his life more than he blessed the first. God had blessed Job in the beginning. He went through all of this turmoil and this trial, and at the end, God blessed it more than he had in the beginning. If you read the end in the book of Revelation, let me just take you there for a minute, because what faith does is it gives you confidence. It gives you deep, underlying confidence. Whatever you're going through, this is going to be okay. Which is why I constantly say the whole net takeaway from this series is this: you should be happy on Tuesday morning. You say, well, you don't know what my Tuesdays are like. I don't care what they're like. That's the whole point. I don't know, and I don't care. Because you have faith. I'm not saying you wouldn't have a down day or a down moment or, but I'm talking about on a given Tuesday with traffic, in traffic. Let me add traffic. Because you have an underlying confidence that my story is going somewhere good. And it says, if you get the whole context of the Bible, it started good, it turned to a mess in a hurry, messy, and then you get to the end. You ready? Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. It all comes around. And he says, and I heard the voice from the throne, now the dwelling of God is with men. It's kind of like, it's all going to be put back together just the way it needed to be. They will be his people, and God himself will be their God. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Man, what a picture. Huh? I mean, I don't know, it doesn't say, but I could sure see Jesus, like, think about this. Knowing he's going to heal Lazarus, he's going to heal him. But still it says Jesus wept. And then, I don't know, but you got to think maybe Jesus reached over to Mary or Martha and what? Wiped some tears. Come here. You ever hug somebody, you just got to put them right here. It says God's going to wipe away every tear. And there will be no more mourning or sorrow or crying or pain. For the old order of things has passed away. God is still good. And if we know the story ends good, and you have to make a decision in your life, listen to me, you have to make a decision in your life if you believe that or not. But to me, to believe and to trust in God is to trust that this story is going somewhere good. Then when you're in the middle of doubt or suffering or pain or loss, you got to do something. And so what I want to dedicate this final part of this series is, what do you do when you're waiting? Say, okay, I'm in. I believe it. This is going to turn into something good. I'm trusting that somehow this is turning into something good, but man, it's taking a long time. And what should I do while I'm waiting? It's a great question. Because one of the things you don't want to do when you suffer is you don't want to rehearse the problem. Who's ever done this? Well, we've all done it. Let's go over it again. Let's go over it again. Like, since we're miserable, let's make ourselves really miserable. Could you believe the way he came into my office and said that? You remember? And you tell your friends and you email them. I couldn't believe it. Everything was going good. And he comes in on a Thursday. It's true, because like some of your friends have heard it so many times, it's just like, just play the audio, because go over it and you rehearse it. But what we learn is that after a while, like that's not healing me, it's not helping me. It's not healing me, it's not helping me. Any kind of suffering, it kind of doesn't matter, but if you go in your mind, well, why did it happen? At the end of the day, it's all that is the past, and all it's going to do is drain your energy. There's some things that you can do when you're suffering while you're waiting. While you're waiting to understand it, to overcome it, to get through it. 1 Peter is a book about suffering, chapter 2. It says, to this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, ready? Leaving you a what? Example. So there's a good place to start. What if I looked at Jesus and his suffering? He suffered, and he's an example. What does that mean? He suffered and showed us how to do it well. You're going to suffer. So when you suffer, Don't look to the stuff that's online. Don't look to, people just spouting all kinds of anger. Look to Christ. Well, how did he treat suffering? Was his suffering fair? No, it wasn't fair. It wasn't even close to fair. Is your suffering fair? No. That's why you're so mad about it. But the reality is, the longer you go in life, you realize that people suffer, and then you get to make a choice about what you do with it. And so he says, he left an example. Watch this. And so, can you continue that verse? I think it was 21. Leaving you as an example so that you should follow in his steps. So let's do it the way Jesus did. If we're going to suffer, let's follow his lead. Next one. When they hurled their insults at him, he did not, what? Man. Like, that's the first thing you learn in Flint. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're going to survive 6th grade in Flint, you got to learn to retaliate. You got to learn to say something back. You got to have a comeback, verbal, and if it needs to be, what? Yeah. I said Flint. I didn't say Bloomfield Hills. I grew up in Flint. Next. So he suffered. He refused to retaliate. He didn't make threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. What's he saying? I am trusting God to settle this score. Man, does that take faith. Doesn't it? Come on, let's be honest. Like, that takes faith. I feel like you need to get punched in the nose, but I'm going to let God do it. I hope he uses a big fist. But I'm not going to take it into my hands. I'm going to entrust myself. So then it says this, he himself bore our sins so that we, ready, might die to sin and live to righteousness. And by his wounds we have been healed. One version says this, you're going to die to your old silly way of life. This is a beautiful celebration, baptism. People, it's symbolic, dead. It's symbolic of death, burial. That's all gone. That's dead. And newness of life. I have a new purpose. I have a new direction. I have a new destiny for my life. Let's go on. 1 Peter 4, ready? Since Jesus went through everything you're going through, this is good to know. Everybody look up here. This is good to know. He's already been there. You've been through some tough stuff, and you can say, my leader has already been there. Since Jesus went through everything you're going through and more, learn to think like him. Think of your suffering. Just think about this sentence. Think of your sufferings as weaning from that old sinful habit of always expecting to get your own way. What is one thing that suffering is? It's not getting what you want. That's for darn sure. I do not want this. And what? You're getting it anyway. And I have a little 5-year-old, and guess what she wants? Whatever she wants. That's what she wants. She wants what I want. I want what I want. And you're in this constant battle of trying to help them get a few things that they need. But the constant battle is you can't have everything that you can't. You can't have everything you want. And even if you could, and even if I had the ability to give it to you, I would ruin you. You believe that, right? Please believe that. You absolutely ruin. You destroy. So strange. So he calls it an old sinful habit of, I want to get what I want. Now, you're 33 years old. Now you have more money, and now you have more freedom than what you do when you're 3. And you start getting what you want all the time. What kind of person are you turning into? good one. Right away, what you need is some responsibility. You need some weight on your shoulders. You need some not getting what you want. Huh? You need a spouse. Huh? I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not. No, I mean, you see what's going on in our society. It's like pushing off. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. It's funny and it's not. It's true. And you need about 3 kids. Now all of a sudden, is life about you? No, no one cares what you think anymore. You say, well, that's the worst thing. I just want everyone to sit around me like Gaston, and everyone sit at my feet and just worship my muscles. What? No, you're missing the whole point of life. The whole point of life is to be in the mix and to be there serving and doing the things. You know, I was thinking yesterday, I'm going to write a book called The Point of Life is Doing Laundry. And I might. Because, you know, yesterday, Vicki came up here to help with the kids program. It was so good. Oh, my gosh. I'll talk about it later. Our kids' Halloween outreach program was amazing. And she goes, hey, would you mind? I just want to say yes. I don't even care what you're going to say next. Yes, I do mind. I'm busy. I am really busy. It's Saturday and tomorrow's Sunday. I got church on Sunday. I said, not at all. What do you have in mind? Anybody know what it was? Well, I started the laundry. No, look, anyone can start the laundry. No, come on, starting laundry. It's finishing the laundry. That's the hard work. Does anybody know this? There's a fold and fold and fold and fold and put in place. Anyone can start the laundry. I was so happy to do the laundry yesterday. Now look.
Can you turn me on, Kai?
So, there she is. Hi, babe.
Who does 99.9% of the laundry?
Oh, me, of course. Do you want to do some more? Or you want to come to the women's study this week? Huh? Look at the laundry doer in our house right there. Hey, babe.
He does one load, and you'll all hear about it. So.
Don't mess with my material in the middle of the sermon. Hey, babe, come here for a second. Come here for a second while you're up here. Do your mic. Tell everybody on a different note about the women's study because you're up here and you guys started last week because it's so good.
Oh.
The women's Bible study.
Well, I was just telling Anna and Kimberly that you're using my material from the study that I talked about.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Which one?
We just started the women's study on Wednesday, which if anyone's interested, you're welcome to join us. We just started. It's every Wednesday in the morning and in the evening.
Yeah.
But we talked about John the Baptist, and we talked about how John the Baptist was killed from Herod, and he had faith. And, you know, you want to have faith like David and Goliath, and David has faith that he's going to go against the giant, you know, and he wins. But what happens when you lose? And John the Baptist had all that faith, yet he was still beheaded. And so it talks about suffering, and you're kind of copying me, but... I might have to say that
I will let you finish if you want.
Yours is better, though.
No. Thanks, baby. Okay. All right. She does the laundry in the house. I think the good news is nobody's fooled here to think that I do a lot of laundry anyway. But if I do, I got to milk it for all I can get. So I will tell you this. Everybody goes through things in life, poorly illustrated or not, where I don't want to do this. But you what? You could do it anyway. So I want to take you to the story of Joseph. When he gets, talk about a raw deal. Like, to me, Joseph and Job and Jesus, those are the 3 stories that are like archetypical of every one of our lives. And there's great promise, and there's just, you know, dreams and all this stuff in young Joseph, and then he's right away. He's sold as a slave, and then he gets a raw deal after a raw deal, and he ends up in Pharaoh's prison. And we had already learned that Joseph kept himself busy doing good things. So what I want to just leave this message, this whole series, is this. You can choose if you're going to be bitter and angry and resentful, or I'm just going to be as productive and positive as I can muster. I'll say one more time, I'm not against you taking a few days to cry. I'm not against that. I think that's really healthy. But if it's 6 years, you might not be doing yourself any favors. You might be realizing that, you know what, this is just hurting me. This is not helping me now. This is taking me down. I want to be as positive, that's faith-filled, and as productive as I can. What is productive? It means just look around you. What can I do? You say, I got nothing. Look, Joseph's in prison. I want to read you a little slice of what happens to Joseph. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, and the king of Egypt, Pharaoh, was angry with his cupbearer and chief baker. The cupbearer and the baker, they screwed up, and Pharaoh sends them to prison. It just so happened it was the same prison where, what? Joseph was. How many know the older you get, the less you believe in coincidences? You start to go, maybe God was involved in that. So Joseph happened to be in this prison. And he was assigned to attend to them. I don't know exactly what that means. It's just that he was assigned to attend to them. It seemed like wherever Joseph went, no matter how hard he got beat down, he would keep rising up. It always says God was with him, and he would end up in charge of stuff because he would take care of stuff. Again, I got to think, like, if something bad happens to you, if you get thrown in jail for doing something that you didn't do, how much energy would you be tempted to waste on anger and resentment? And I'm going to be as least cooperative and as least helpful as possible. But the reality is you're there. And so Joseph sort of looks around him and says, I'm going to just clean this place up a bit. And the guy that has to lock you up and hand you food, you turn the plate in, you give it to him as nicely as you can. Maybe the guard, it's his job. I mean, he didn't put you in there, but he has to lock the door. And maybe you ask him about his family. Maybe you find some way to be as useful and as productive as you can in the situation that you are in. That's all you can get from Joseph. It's just kind of how he operated. And so now he's in charge. And then it says, this is really important. Each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker, were held in the prison, and they had a dream. Now, what do we know about Joseph? He was a dreamer and an interpreter of dreams. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. They were sad. So when he saw that they were sad, he asked about it. So that's just a line in the Bible. Like, get to the end. No, this is an important line. This might be the line in the story. Because he didn't have to ask. He's got his own problems. Are you with me? I got my own suffering. People should ask me how I'm doing. One of the greatest things to get you out of your suffering mentally is you to start asking about somebody else's suffering. I saw that you're sad. Joseph, you get the idea that he wasn't focused on his suffering. He was concerned about what? Hey, man, I saw what's wrong. Man, I had this dream. The first thing that you can do is you can pay attention to the people that are around you. What are they going through? Do you know something? It doesn't take you long to find out almost everybody close to you. You know somebody who's going through something. that you can be a beneficial person in their life by being there, by talking to them. And then, of course, as you know, the story goes on, and the cupbearer shares his dream with Joseph. He says, I had this dream, and I don't know what to do about it. And Joseph's like, hit me with it. And he says, well, there was this vine, and it had 3 branches, and then, I took the branches and I squeezed the grapes, and the grapes went into the cup, and I gave it to the king. And Joseph interpreted the dream for him to say, the branches, they're 3 days, because there's 3 branches, and in 3 days, the king's going to restore you to that position as cupbearer. He said, only when you get there, don't forget about me. I told you this. Of course, it did happen, as Joseph said, and when he was restored to the king, what happened? It says he forgot about Joseph. Oh, I forgot. Thank you so much. But Joseph had this way that no matter what I'm going through, I'm gonna still be productive wherever I am. I'm going to find a job to do. I'm going to sweep the cell. I'm going to talk to the people around me. You know what will help us while we're waiting, when we're suffering? We find some way to do good to the people that are around us. About every 2 weeks, I get a couple of Tupperware boxes on my porch full of blankets, shawls, hand-knitted shawls. When I pull out the Tupperware boxes, I pull out little notes inside of each one is wrapped, and it tells a story or just a summary of who the shawl is going to, and it's to a family who's lost a loved one, and perhaps a child, and many of them were in Uvalde, Texas, where the children were shot at school. So I lay hands on these blankets, and I pray over them, and then I return them to my porch. Do you know who drops them off and picks them up? A family from this church that had to bury their 3-year-old daughter from a car wreck. And they cried and they mourned and they did all the normal stuff, but then they decided, I got to do something with my suffering. I got to do something with it. And now, those warm blankets go to cover hurting families all over the world. Because as I said, suffering will change you. But you get to decide if it's for the better. But the one thing you want to do, learn from Jesus. Learn from Christ who suffered. Take on his mindset. Learn from Joseph. But the one thing you don't want to do, my friends, you don't want to become bitter. There's a little tiny slice at the end of Job's story that you should hear, where God speaks to Job. And he said, Job, basically he says, fasten your seatbelt. I want to have a chat with you. I mean, you got to read that. Because after a while, we all get a little arrogant. Think we know a little too much. And he starts to go with Job. Job, were you there when I laid the foundations of the earth? Can you tell me who rotates it on its axis? I mean, who got the whole thing spinning just right? Can you talk to me about that, Job? And he just goes one question after another, after another, after another. Unanswerable questions to Job. Job says, I get it. I get it. He said, I spoke of things too wonderful for me. You know what faith is? Faith is knowing that there's a lot of things that are just too wonderful for this. As proud as you are of this, some things are too wonderful to comprehend. So you humbly just say, I don't know. But I trust. And while I trust, I'm going to do what I can to be positive and be productive. That's it. Friends, it's just not that difficult. Just be positive and be productive. Do something of good whenever you can. Because it will teach you the ultimate lesson that life is not about you getting your own way. But it's really about all of us getting into God's way. And that's what makes the world a better place for every one of us. Let's stand. We'll have a closing prayer.